Hello, it's Caleb Parkin here, writer in residence on the Beyond Words programme, part of Cheltenham Festival's year-round outreach. This week, week 5, the penultimate, second to last week, I would like us to think about haiku. And if you've never tried haiku before, I love it. It's a very short, compact form of poetry which originated in Japan. And Japan is a country with a really rich and fascinating culture and a really long tradition of poetry of this kind. I'm going to say something a bit more about well-being and haiku and why I've put this form in these sessions. But to do that, I'm going to go outside for the warm-up. The warm-up this week is a bit more of a wind-down warm-up. And I'll explain that when we're outside in a moment. I've come out to the corner of my garden and I hope it's not too windy for the microphone. The warm-up this week is more of a wind down, as I say, because haiku is a really interesting form. It can seem really simple, but people spend a lifetime, and people really do, trying to master it. So it can also be really complex and intricate. One of the things it requires of a poet, of a writer, is to pay really close attention to the world around us, to use our senses, and my paper's blowing away, so it's a bit breezy, to really use our senses and to be really precise with our language and description, because we've only got those 3 lines and those 17 syllables. So what I'd like to do is a quick mindfulness activity. It'll only be a minute or 2 just to tune into our senses and start noticing the world around us. And I'm really lucky to have a garden. If you don't have a garden, you can look out the window and notice what's out that window. You can go on a walk. The Japanese call these ginkgo walks, where you specifically go out looking for haiku material. There's a car just going down the cul-de-sac here. But again, haiku is really about working with whatever happens, and so is mindfulness. So what I'd like you to do is just to sit on your chair or wherever you're sat on. And if you feel comfortable doing so, just close your eyes. And close your eyes and take a couple of deep breaths. And as you breathe in, just imagine your breath as light. And that light moves all the way down the body to the tips of the toes. And then as you breathe out, that light moves all the way up and back out through the nose. So just take a couple of breaths in. And breathing out light from the toes. And breathing light in. And breathing light out. And I'd like you to turn your attention to the furthest sound away from you. I can hear people cycling. I can hear my dog doing something. Furthest sound away, I can hear some traffic. And then what sound can you hear at the level of the room or the space that you're in? You can hear the rustling of leaves. There's a pigeon. And then notice the sounds at the level of your own body. Can you hear any rushing in your ears? Can you hear your pulse? And then taking one last breath, just notice any smells around that you might not have noticed. What's the smell of the room? smell of the breeze. And now what I'd like you to do is to take this connection with our senses into the main writing activity, which unsurprisingly is going to be writing a haiku. So we'll be back in a moment to talk about that. It was a bit noisy outside, so I've come inside to talk you through haiku. What I'm going to do is share with you the basics of haiku, a couple of examples, some that I've just written while I was sat outside, and then you can go forth and write many haiku. So, I've got my sort of cheat sheet here. So, haiku tended to be used to distill a poignant experience. Something that you kind of experienced and felt kind of emotional about. It can be about details of environment. So if you see something and kind of want to point to it and say, look at that, then that's a good thing to write a haiku about. Japanese poets, as I mentioned, would go on these ginkgo walks in which they would look for fleeting natural images. So a leaf falling, a fish jumping, things like that. But really contemporary haiku we write now, can be about all sorts of things. So if you live in a city, as I do, write about the city. It can be about relationship, your feelings, anything you want really. It's quite fun to play with these ideas of tradition, of what people have done for a long time with haiku, and make it your own as well. One thing you can do is in the first line make a reference to the season. This is called a kigo, and it might be something like a particular type of blossom that only comes out in a particular season. So you don't have to say spring or autumn. It could be something else that you notice that's particular to this season where you are. Really describe details, really look closely. That's why we did that mindfulness activity. What do you notice about what's happening? What colours, textures, contrasts, things like that did you observe? How did it sound? Was it loud? Was it something big, or was it something quiet and small? And if it had a smell or a taste, how could you accurately describe that and the way that it felt to you? If you want, the third line of a haiku can have a kind of turn where you do something a little bit different to what's come before and make the poem feel differently. So all of that within these 3 lines and these 17 syllables. It's a lot to do, isn't it? So you can spend a long time tinkering. Here's an example of the syllables. Count your syllables. Count your syllables. Make sure you have 17 in groups of 3 lines. So that's a haiku. This one's by an American poet called Richard Wright. White caps on the bay, a broken signboard banging in the April wind. Again, just a little thing he's noticed. And this is another American contemporary, which means modern, haiku, which I really like and is nothing to do with nature and the seasons really. I wear the mask of myself and very nearly get away with it. Just let that sink in. While I was sat outside, I also wrote a couple of haiku, and looking at my sheet here it is. It's full of crossings out, and they're not done yet. So these are a few quick ones that I wrote. Tops of the poplars susurrate on the warm breeze. Their trunks bend, bone white. Susurrate is the sound that leaves make, and I love that word. Bird song and bike tyres, patterning sky and tarmac, squeaky brakes, blackbirds. And the last one, which I enjoyed, which just arrived very much by itself. Pigeon's arrival on fence top. I turn to look. Pigeon's departure. So look up haiku online, find out more about them. There's loads more rules and things that I haven't mentioned, and you can spend a really long time with these, and I hope that you do. They're really enjoyable to write. I enjoyed writing these, and I hope you go off and write loads of them, and I look forward hopefully to reading some of them. In this film, we've talked about haiku and how it involves paying really close attention and using your senses and being really specific with your language. For the takeaway task this week, I'm going to invite you to create a list of gratitudes, things that you really love and appreciate in your life. But I don't want them to be big things. I'd like them to be quite small things, and I'd like them to be really sensory. So tell me about what kind of foods you really like. Tell me about an object in the house, in your home that you really enjoy. Be specific about it and use your senses. See how many of those you can write. And then next time we're going to have a go at writing praise poems. And that's going to be the last in this series of films. And hopefully a really nice note to finish on. So see you then.